Annie Duke played professional poker for over 20 years. In her book, Thinking in Bets, her thesis is simple: life is a poker game, not chess. The rules of chess are well defined. Every move on a chessboard can be analyzed. At the end of a game, we can examine each choice and decide what was good or bad. We can learn from our mistakes and improve through deliberate practice. Poker does not offer the same clarity. It has rules, but you cannot see your opponent's cards before placing a bet. Even after you win or lose a hand, you may not know whether your choice was good or bad. I always admired chess grandmasters for their intelligence. It encouraged me to apply rule-based logic to everyday decisions. I judged each decision by its outcome. I rarely accounted for luck. No one can know with certainty how a decision will play out. Every time I made one, I was placing a bet on an uncertain outcome. This essay brings together the main lessons I took from the book. I have grouped them into three themes: probability, luck versus skill, and how to make better bets. Wanna bet? Duke calls one of our most common mistakes resulting. We judge a decision as good or bad from the result it produced. An outcome depends on two factors: the quality of our choice and luck. Even a well-thought-out decision can fail. A careless choice can succeed. Luck can never be removed from the equation. Resulting often makes us learn the wrong lesson. We build a story in our heads about what happened, why it happened, what we heard, or what we read. We form beliefs from that story. We rarely update them as new evidence emerges. Our beliefs slowly harden into a narrative about who we are. Once that narrative forms, we defend it rather than question it. Duke describes this as motivated reasoning. We pick facts that fit our view and ignore those that do not. Duke also argues that intelligent people may suffer more from motivated reasoning. Intelligence helps them build a tighter story and defend a belief with greater conviction. I found this argument hard to accept at first. Duke claims that intelligent people are generally more wrong. My inference is narrower. Intelligence helps us searching for the truth. It provides us more proof to defend our beliefs with better conviction. Duke's proposition reminded me of the Greek poet Archilochus. He wrote that a fox knows many things, but a hedgehog knows one big thing. Isaiah Berlin later used the line to distinguish between two kinds of thinkers. Some draw on multiple ideas, others organize everything around one central idea. It appears to me that some people slowly turn into hedgehogs. They build one large story and then fit every new fact inside it. Charlie Munger described a similar habit as the man with a hammer syndrome. To the man with a hammer, every problem tends to look like a nail. The problem is not intelligence itself. The problem is using one or two ideas to explain everything. Duke recommends treating every decision as a bet on an uncertain future. Ask yourself whether you would place real money behind the decision. Once you label a decision as a bet, pause to ask yourself, where did the belief come from? How good is the source? What am I missing? What would make me change my mind? Duke suggests expressing confidence as a number. Instead of saying, I am sure, you can say, I have 70% confidence in this decision. The number does not make the belief more accurate. It asks you to put a number behind your belief. You can update the belief later. Moving from 70% confidence to 50% is an update. Moving from right to wrong feels like defeat. The scientific method offers a useful comparison. Scientists observe the natural world, ask questions, test ideas, and expose their conclusions to criticism. New evidence can change an accepted theory. Scientists are still human. They can become attached to their work and resist criticism. The difference is that the scientific method encourages other people to question them. I have never questioned the credibility of a scientist merely because new evidence changed their view. In many cases, I trusted the scientist more. If I can rate my confidence, accept uncertainty, and explain why my view changed, I can think better. The aim is not to doubt everything. It is to stop claiming more certainty than I have earned. Luck versus skill. Once an outcome is known, we face a trickier question. Was the result due to my skill, or was I just lucky? Duke calls this, quote, fielding. She writes that most of us field badly. We are the heroes of our own life stories. We succeed because of skill and lose because of bad luck. This protects our ego but prevents us from learning from our wins and losses. We may double down on a poor choice because it once worked. We may also abandon a sound process because it failed once. A fair coin has an equal chance of landing heads or tails. Toss it 10 times, and you may not get 5 of each. Even 1,000 tosses will not guarantee exactly 500 heads and 500 tails. Suppose I earn 100 rupees for every head and lose 100 rupees for every tail. After a small number of tosses, I may end up richer or poorer. The odds were even, but the short-run result was not. The same problem appears in business and life. A good process can fail because of bad luck. A weak process can benefit from one lucky run. One large payoff can make our earlier losses feel irrelevant, even when our calculations say otherwise. The payoff resets our expectations, encouraging us to try again. This is one reason we sometimes repeat an action even when the process remains doubtful. Luck can reward the wrong behavior. Two other biases make it harder to learn from outcomes: hindsight bias and black and white thinking. After the outcome, the result begins to feel inevitable. We create a story explaining why it happened and tell ourselves that we knew it all along. The uncertainty that existed before the decision disappears from our memory. We also prefer to rate every result as either a clean win or a clear loss. Most outcomes are a muddy mix of both. A failed business idea may reveal a useful customer segment. A profitable contract may consume all my working capital, placing my whole business at risk. A single good hire doesn't indicate a great hiring process. Black and white thinking hides these separate lessons. It gives us a simple answer when the truth is less comfortable. We want the world to feel certain. We prefer to feel in control of our outcomes. Hindsight bias and black and white thinking offers us comforting story. They do not necessarily offer a more accurate one. Duke argues that the way out is honest fielding. Ask how much of the result came from skill and how much came from luck. You must also account for the situation in which you made the decision. A sound choice in one situation may be careless in another. You can never separate skill and luck clearly. That does not mean you should avoid asking the question. A rough but honest answer is better than a story that protects your ego. You can learn only when you are honest about why things happen the way they did. Improving our decisions. Duke argues that we cannot correct our biases alone. We are good at spotting errors in other people's thinking but poor at finding the same errors in our own. She suggests forming a small group that debates decisions and rewards accuracy over agreement. The purpose is not consensus. It is to improve the quality of each member's beliefs. I remember a case from my supply chain course during my MBA at ISB. It taught me that average demand can hide the range of outcomes a system must handle. Knowing the average is not enough. You must also consider how far actual demand can move from it. I see a similar lesson in Duke's argument. Once you consider several possible outcomes, you are better prepared for a future that does not follow your preferred plan. Duke recommends that decision groups adopt the Kudos framework. Sociologist Robert Merton developed the underlying norms while studying how science should work. Kudos stands for communism, universalism, disinterestedness, and organized skepticism. Communism means that information should be available to the group. Universalism means that the same standard should apply to every claim, regardless of who made it. Disinterestedness means remaining alert to interests that may affect judgment. Organized skepticism means that questioning and disagreement should be expected. A group should judge an idea on its merit, not on the status of the person who proposed it. The idea appears sound on paper but difficult to adopt. I prefer to spend time with those who share similar beliefs. I often avoid those who disagree with me. The group works only when every member can ask difficult questions. They must be free to test the logic, analyze the situation at hand, examine the facts, and consider all possibilities. Over the past year, I have also used AI to debate my ideas. I can ask it to act as a devil's advocate and criticize my reasoning. In my experience, AI often softens the criticism. It has been trained to be a helpful assistant. I am currently testing a different approach. I tell the AI that the idea came from a friend and that I need to give him critical feedback. The output appears more critical than before. It is too early to say that the method works, but it has been slightly better than my earlier approach. Duke also warns against running these conversations only inside our own heads. We already know which answer we want. Our imaginary critic, including an AI critic, may not be strong enough. It is often better to ask another person. Be open to disagreements. When reviewing a decision, Duke suggests hiding the outcome from the group. Share the facts, assumptions, situation, and decision-making process. Tell the story only up to the point where the decision was made. If the group already knows the outcome, hindsight bias will affect the review. The group members will work backwards and find reasons why the result was predictable. The final chapter uses time to create distance from present emotion. One method is the 10-10-10 rule introduced by Susie Welch. Ask what the consequences of a choice will be in 10 minutes, 10 months, and 10 years. Warren Buffett made a related point in his 1996 letter to Berkshire Hathaway shareholders. He wrote that investors unwilling to own a stock for 10 years should not consider owning it even for 10 minutes. Duke also asks us to look backwards. How would I feel today if I had made this decision 10 minutes ago? What if I had made it 10 months or 10 years ago? Would I accept the reasoning, or would I call it careless? Duke acknowledges that no framework can make us perfectly rational. Every idea in the book helps us think more clearly. None can guarantee success. We can never remove our emotions or past experiences from a decision. Nor should we pretend that emotions have no value. Fear may reveal a risk. Excitement may reveal an opportunity. The problem begins when the emotion of the moment becomes the entire process. Duke recommends mapping plausible outcomes before acting. She discusses three methods: backcasting, pre-commitment, and the pre-mortem. Backcasting begins with the desired result. Imagine that you have reached the end state, then work backwards. What needs to happen immediately before success? What needs to happen before that? This exposes the conditions hidden inside our plan. It also helps us prepare contingency plans when one of those conditions fails to occur. Pre-commitment means deciding some rules before pressure arrives. An investor may decide when to sell before buying. A business may set its maximum credit period before entering a negotiation. The earlier rule does not need to be permanent. New facts may justify changing it. Breaking the rule forces you to pause before acting. You must decide whether the facts changed or whether you're just being emotional. A pre-mortem begins with failure. Assume that the decision has failed, then list the reasons why. Psychologist Gary Klein developed this exercise for project teams. Treating failure as given makes it easier to voice concerns that may otherwise sound negative. The exercise brings hidden risks into the open before they become outcomes. Bear in mind that none of these methods predicts the future. They force you to think through your decision with more clarity. Where this leaves me. Reading the book made me realize that Duke is not offering tools that guarantee more wins. She is helping us understand on how to think clearly within the limited information available to us. Even a good decision will fail. A poor decision can still succeed. The aim is to improve the process, not guarantee the outcome. Now, not every decision needs this much analysis. Applying the entire process to easy decisions would waste my time. Annie's approach matters when the stakes are high. Use it when faced with an irreversible decision or when a decision's outcome dictates what happens next. I now see the value of documenting the reasoning behind such decisions. A written record gives me something more reliable than memory when I review the result later. I am yet to maintain my own decision journal. Reading the book made me realize why I need one. The tools in the book are useful, but all of them assume that I remain able to make the next decision. If I do not survive the short run, the whole exercise becomes intellectual masturbation. A decision can have favorable odds and still be unacceptable to me. The expected outcome does not matter if a bad result wipes my ability to survive. Before asking whether something is a good bet, I need to know if I can survive being wrong. How much can I afford to lose? Can I reverse the decision? What happens if the least favorable plausible outcome occurs? Not every decision is reversible. Poker players can make another bet only while they still have chips. A business can make another decision only while it still has cash, people, trust, and time. My first rule is simple. Never make a bet you cannot survive losing. Appendix A, Question Bank. These are the questions I have written down for myself. What am I actually betting on? Which alternatives am I rejecting? What is the opportunity cost of each? What do I believe is true? How confident am I? What are my sources? Am I reasoning towards the truth or defending a story I already like? What are the plausible alternatives to my view? Why might someone intelligent disagree? Would I place real money behind this belief? What would make me pause? What outcomes remain possible? What odds do I give each? How much will the result depend on luck versus skill? Who can give me an outside view? Can I explain the choice without leading them towards my answer? What are the consequences in 10 minutes? 10 months? 10 years? Am I making this choice calmly, or am I being led by fear, anger, or excitement? If this succeeds, what has to happen? If it fails 1 year from now, why did it fail? Have I recorded my decision, assumptions, and reasoning so I can review them honestly later? Appendix B, Decision Rules. A list of rules to ground me before making any decision. Never make a bet you cannot survive losing. Treat every important belief as a bet. State your confidence as a probability. Decide what would change your mind. Judge the decision separately from the result. Separate skill, conditions, and luck. Record the decision before the outcome. Ask for disagreement before approval. Examine success and failure before acting.